Mm.
Nathan,
Oh, Jeffrey, you hear me?
yeah, I can.
Perfect.
All right, hang on. Let me get you on my full screen here. How's audio?
It's perfect. How's my audio?
Oh, well, man, you got the headgear and the whole bit going on.
Ready to be flying a 747 with these things.
Take off.
Copy that. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me. I really enjoyed reconnecting with you the other day, and I know you're going to share a lot of awesome insights about being a father. You're someone who's done the transformation work, and you're a Christian and spiritual. And I just think there's a lot of awesome things that people are going to learn here with you today.
Well, let's see what the Spirit brings forth, right?
Yeah, that's it right there.
Hang on just 1 second. I want to kill my other computer here just so it doesn't ding or do anything distracting as we're going. All right.
Oh, beautiful. Jeffrey, how long have you've got two different age groups set of kids? How long have you been a father?
Wow, 27 years. Long time, about as long as you've been alive, Nathan. So, yeah, I have 4 kids and 2 sets, if you will. So, 20 sons, 27, 25, and then I have a 4.5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. So, it's quite a spread there.
How is it for you the second time around?
Enlightening, fun, enriching. Um, I can only say positive things because I think first time around, I was much younger. I was kind of going crazy with career and different businesses. And so even though I spent a lot of time with my kids, certainly not as much as I do now. And so and quite frankly, in that time period, in the last 27 years, I've done a lot of personal work. So I'm much more living in the now. I'm more grounded. I'm more connected. So when you are connection and when you are love, you show up differently in those relationships. So it's definitely very rich second time around. At least I'm experiencing more of it. Maybe I'll put it that way.
Sounds like you had some challenges in those early years and you've learned some lessons that have allowed you to not be as unprepared in the process now.
Oh, for sure. And let's face it, I mean, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and that doesn't stop if you're committed to high performance and excellence. I mean, you continually are morphing and growing and adapting, right? But yeah, it's certainly my experience is very different this time around. I think
Beautiful.
because I'm more aware.
Beautiful. What kind of challenges did you have that you learned from that you're really tapping into this time around?
I don't think they were as much challenges in my parenting as much as it was personal challenges for me. So, just maybe spending way too much time focused on career. I was in global endeavors that caused me to travel a lot. So I was gone a lot. And that impacted, just the quantity of time that I had with my older boys. And people talk about, well, you make up for lack of quantity with quality. I think you can do that to a certain extent. But the reality is there's no substitute for quantity. And either a man decides that he's going to raise his children or he defers that to let others raise his children. And that's not something that I ever wanted to do. So I've worked hard to stay connected, and quite frankly, even at 27 and 25, I still am parenting. Right? It's more of a mentor role now than maybe a father son, but it's still there, And my boys still call me consistently to go, here's what I'm thinking, help me discuss this with me. Let me have me hash this out, make sure that I'm making the right choices. And so it's kind of cool to have that relationship moving forward,
I guess once you are a father, you never stop being a father.
No, you don't. No, you don't. It just takes on a, different role, different context. So but it's fun. It's rich.
That's beautiful. And even though you didn't get to spend as much time as you would have liked inside of your career, your older kids have turned out to be very successful from my understanding in their endeavors. And I guess your mentorship and guidance, and obviously they've been with you, watching you evolve and learn, because you've gone through a lot of transformation. It sounds like you've done a lot of personal development spiritually and mentally. Has any of that rubbed off on them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know you're a proponent of Landmark, and they both have gone through Landmark as teenagers. But they've seen that growth in me. They've seen the struggle. They've seen the success, the angst, the joy. I mean, through all of that, right? And our kids are always watching. So that's just the reality, is that they're always learning, whether we think we're teaching or not. They're always learning from us. And so I've had the privilege, we were very involved in Boy Scouts growing up. So there was a lot of camping and hiking and wilderness survival and a lot of things that I think are core to the development of a man and his soul. Knowing you can take care of yourself, there's a confidence that comes with that. There's also a focus on a lot of the things that we've done just on character. And so being able to be quite honest with them and go, here's where I've struggled with these character issues, or, and that where the times I haven't been virtuous, and that I don't want this for you. And to have very open and candid discussions around that as they're young adults and into adulthood now. That's been really powerful because, I'm able to say, hey, I screwed up. I didn't do this right for whatever reason. And I didn't like the outcome. So now here's how I do it, because, if you don't like the outcome, then you just change what you're doing to get a different outcome. And that's what I've done. And so they've learned that through the process, through, hopefully they don't have to make all the mistakes I made. So far, they've skipped a lot of them. So I hope that path continues.
Me too. And it sounds like you plugged them into the right things. Like you're saying, you had them do Landmark as teenagers. I was a Boy Scout too, and that profoundly impacted my life. They went on to be Eagle Scouts. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all Eagles. My father and brother are Eagles, and both of my older sons are. It's tragic that program has kind of imploded at this point as they've compromised. So I am concerned. In fact, I've been thinking about, for my 4.5-year-old, where do I get those same kinds of experiences for him? Because I don't think Boy Scouts will even exist when he's old enough to join. But those are life lessons, right? That are so critical. When you think about having the Scout oath or the Scout law, and what that really means to have a set of principles that guide your life and your decisions. There's so many different ways that's trained, right? And either we're training them as parents in the areas of character, or they're getting it from school, they're getting it from the neighbors, the environment that they live in. And I was always very purposeful to make sure that I'm pouring into them along those ways. One of the other things we did that was kind of fun, and I wanted to make sure I shared this with you today, is that I took them through a course called Raising Modern Day Knights. And again, it's the same thing about what does it mean to live a virtuous life. And so to this day, they can still quote the 4 tenets of being a knight. And so if we think about that, honorable, endeavor of being a knight around with the round table, kind of a King Arthur kind of a scenario, the tenets of being a knight were to live pure, speak true, right wrongs, and serve the king. And I look at what's going on in the world today, and I think, if we just had a simple focus on living pure and speaking true and righting wrongs, if people were committed to those basic things, what a different world we'd be living in right now. And I had the privilege of being able to pour that into my older boys, and certainly working to pour that into my younger children now, because character matters, and I think character is the difference. And as we spoke about doing this interview, I thought, what is it that really was my greatest success as a father? And I think it really is in focusing on building their character. They have a strong work ethic. They have a commitment to truth. They have a spiritual life. They understand it's not just about them. They live the golden rule. So you start looking at those kinds of things, and that has a lifelong impact on a man. And then ultimately his marriage and his children and moving forward. So that gifting, I guess, of character is my legacy, and I think that's a calling for all of us as fathers specifically. I think that's our role, is how do we train in real life scenarios virtue and character. I think that's critical.
It's almost like what I'm hearing is the virtues or laws to live life by. And right now we have a world without virtues, and people have not developed their character to care about their neighbor. They're not, we're not fostering trustworthiness, friendliness, all the Scout laws that are so important that really, for me, have totally transformed my life. And it sounds like you've instilled them very deeply with your kids. And I'm almost hearing like this is a formula, because my life seems to be built on virtue. Your kids are, I guess the message to new parents or current parents would be to instill virtues and character and develop character. And in the absence of developing your kid's character, it becomes modern pop media and what the celebrities are pushing out and what just whatever's going on Instagram, and the automatic is geared towards lust and greed and things that really don't produce the kind of world we want to see.
I 100% I agree. It's when you look at the lawlessness that's going on, I think that is when you're looking at the true absence of what I might call godly character, certainly eternal truth. I mean, you can look at virtually every major religion in the world talks about the golden rule, right? and those things are so basic, and yet they seem lost. So at worst, you see this lawlessness that's rampant currently. At best, it's mediocrity. So those people that compromise and they have some virtues, but maybe they're not willing to really stand or have a voice or to speak out or to be a part of the solution, they just end up lost in mediocrity. So, if I have the choice of having a true leader, a virtuous leader, a knight versus a criminal versus someone that's mediocre and doesn't have any impact, what would any of us as fathers choose for our children? Right? It seems like a pretty clear choice to me.
But it also takes discipline. Like when you got to take your kids to camp or to the meetings, like there is a rigor and discipline. If something misses the mark and then you have to reinstill those values, like it takes consistency to really instill these values you're talking about.
It takes consistency, and there's another word I would throw out is intention, because it doesn't happen by accident, right? It's very intentional, planned efforts to consistently teach those. One of the things I did early on in one of my businesses is I lost years ago. I lost my janitor, and my kids at that time, my older boys were probably 8 and 10. So they were still little guys, right? And I chose to hire them as my janitors in my building. And it was very interesting to watch these little guys learn these lessons and to learn to do things thoroughly and correctly, do them right the first time. Having to do things like clean a toilet, which they'd never done in their life and didn't want to do. None of us want to, right? But it was interesting because that was just one more test bed of them learning character, and certainly they learned a work ethic. They learned how to handle money, because obviously I paid them to do that. They learned how to budget, and they learned how to give and to tithe off of the money they were earning. But they also learned things like it was a lot easier to do things right the first time than to have to go back after I inspected and have to redo it, right? Which they never wanted to do. If they didn't want to scrub the toilet right the first time, they didn't want to do it another time. and I know that may sound funny, and I got a lot of grief from my friends because they're like, how can you make your kids do that? I mean, just hire someone to do that. That's not, your kids shouldn't be doing that kind of work. And I'm like, there's no substitute for having a work ethic and being able to take pride in your work. The other thing that it did is for them, it taught them that there was no hierarchy of work, if you will, that being doing an honest day's labor and getting paid for that is something that to this day, they're not going to look down on a server or give a server a hard time or someone who's taking care of them, let's say in a hotel, and a maid that's cleaning the room, whatever. They have an honor for all of these people, and they learned that because they walked in their shoes, right? So there's all of that is with intention, and it wasn't easy. It took a lot of extra work, because the reality was that meant I was the janitor too, right? But it was one of those things where I think as dads, having that intention and putting our best foot forward in whatever endeavor that we're engaging our kids in, and that they're doing life with us. I think that's a big part of it too, is that they've traveled with me around the world. They've always been a part of my businesses in some sometimes smaller than other roles, but they've always been around. They understand entrepreneurship. They understand that, you know, you eat what you kill, so to speak, that you don't look for the handout. You go and create opportunity and for yourself. So those are just some of the things that I think are important messages, even more so today, given what chaos we're surrounded by.
Wow, thank you for sharing all that. There's actually a lot of different cross currents I want to touch upon. You taught them humility by putting them in that role of being the janitors. You also taught them how to manage money and the value of money. You also taught them respect for the people in the service industry, that they would never look down on these people because they've already walked in those shoes. I think that's important. My dad had me mow the lawn, and I would make $20 here, $20 there, and I felt like in those years I actually saved a lot of money. I think money management. Do you feel that money management is something that parents should be teaching, and at what age should they start to instill that value?
Oh, I think it starts early on. You know, a lot of our kids now, whether they are getting money from the Tooth Fairy or they're getting money in birthday cards or whatever, starting them early on to understand that they don't spend everything, that it goes into savings, and they allocate money for different things that are important, that are a part of what we do as a family. I think that's critical. So I don't think you can start teaching that too young. Um, you know, but yeah, money management, and also just understanding that, you know, having a proper relationship with money, that money is a tool. And so you don't save it and it's a pain, and you have to deny yourself because your parents are telling you have to save something. It's understanding that money gives you opportunity. That money is a tool for you to do some of the things that are important to you in the future. And so you're setting yourself up to do it that way. So proper relationship with money, finances is huge. I mean, for all adults, and most of us weren't taught that on purpose. We just kind of got that de facto from our parents, whether they were good or bad at it, right? And I think there's a reason when they talk about, you know, reallocating of money and equality. You know, there's that tendency of, if you made everybody equal, give it 5 years and the rich would be rich again and the poor would be poor again, because they weren't taught some of the basic principles about money, and the relationship is off, right?
And that's part of making sure your kids have a successful life, because you're giving them the tools to go out there and be abundant and to thrive. So
Absolutely.
I think that you also just mentioned your parents, like what you know, learning from your parents about money. What was your relationship with your father, and how did that impact your relationship with your kids?
Got it. My father, and he's not with us anymore. He died about 5 years ago. It's funny, as we're sitting here, I have a picture of him sits on my desk, because he was a man of incredible character, and so I look to him and am reminded of that often. That I am his legacy, and so there's a responsibility on my part to live my life a certain way, that makes a difference, that serves others, that loves people that are not lovely, and that not easy to love. Um, and that's something he instilled in me early on. The whole sense of giving. We always gave to important causes around the world, and it wasn't just money; it was time, it was effort. Whether it was going and building houses in communities in South America or Africa, working on hospitals and churches and different things around the world, there was always that sense of, we have an obligation, that those who are blessed for a purpose, right? Oftentimes he would talk to me about prosperity with a purpose. It wasn't just to enrich ourselves, but it was important to pass it on. So that prosperity is something I really got from my father, and he was a man that grew up with nothing. Oftentimes his family, you know, during the Depression didn't even have food. He was the youngest child of 8. So his older brothers would eat the food, and he oftentimes went to bed hungry. Didn't have shoes until he was like 10 years old. so extreme poverty. But he was a humble man, a man of faith. My earliest memories of him is when I would get up as a little kid and patter into the living room. My dad would be kneeling on the floor at the dinner table in one of the chairs, because he always read his Bible and spent time praying. And I remember every morning seeing him on his knees praying. Until the day he died, he prayed for me. So I think that grace and that love and that protection is something that is just supernaturally protected me all these years, and it's something that I continue to want to do and have that practice in my own life for my family and friends and children. But my dad was a hardworking guy, simple guy, quiet guy, loved big, gave until it hurt. I don't know what else I can tell you about him. He's my hero.
That's beautiful. Honestly, you gave me chills sharing all that. It was just so, it humbles me. I mean, obviously, I'm even thinking about my dad's parents. I mean, they lived through the Depression. That was a era of people, and they fought in, both my grandma and my grandpa fought in wars. And it's really humbling to think about where we come from and our roots. And I think a lot of us come from tough backgrounds. America's a very blessed country, but we're built on a blessing that was paid forward by previous generations, and they went through hardships and sufferings, and now we're going through our own version of hardship and suffering, so that way we can pay it forward to our children and grandchildren, so they can have a new level of blessing and abundance and opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. And you look at the selflessness, I mean, that people were willing, like my father, I mean, he had his parents basically emancipate him so he could go into the Air Force, early, because there was a commitment that you served your country, you served your fellow man, that they were going to make sure that our freedom survived any attack, right? And that's part of the American DNA when you think about it, and that's something that unfortunately I think again we've kind of lost track of that. As the generations after Vietnam, we've morphed into something that I'm not excited about. There's not so much a sense of selflessness as I need to get mine, and that's something that I work hard to counteract in my children. I can't impact everybody, but I certainly have worked hard to mentor the kids and friends that I have around me. And again, it's not that I'm perfect. I'm not even close. But I think living a life of integrity and living a life that is vulnerable and being able to say, here's where I messed up big time. And here's what I'm doing about it. It's a huge teaching moment every time. If we're willing to be vulnerable with others and to share that, and not always try to look good, right? Which I spent a lot of my time doing, by the way, as a young man.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. And actually, it's those moments with my dad when we're both most vulnerable with each other. Those are my favorite memories with my dad, because as men, we gotta be strong.
Right.
We think we gotta be strong, but it's that moment when we let each other into each other that we discover a beautiful moment of love.
Yes. Yeah. The depth is overwhelming in those times. So yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, usually it takes something extraordinary to have those conversations.
Well, it's the old adage of, you don't learn much on the mountaintop. All your lessons are learned in the valley. So yeah, there's always a crisis or a conflict or something that can that can precipitate that. But I don't know, maybe the crisis we're in now that can be some of the outcome, is that people realize that there's got to be something more. There has to maybe be a different way.
We've touched on a lot, and I don't want to keep you too much long. If you don't mind, we were supposed to go for 30 minutes max, but can you go a few minutes over?
Sure.
You touched on a lot in the country, and it seems like there's a missing of what we refer to as God but it could be virtues and values. You've obviously had a close walk with God, and hearing how your father would pray for you and every morning you would see that
Yeah.
impacted you. What is the value of faith, any faith really, but even your faith, that you see in the parenting relationship?
Well, it's interesting because I believe that um, being spiritually connected, and so I want to draw a distinction, I guess, between religion and spirituality. Having a relationship with your eternal creator um, is key, right? When we talk about virtue and character, all of these traits are things that traditionally have been taught in churches and synagogues and mosque, and and through the years, that was maybe where some of this was passed down from elders and priests and pastors. And as we've moved away from that, and maybe churches have been seen as evil or repressive or whatever the case may be, it was like the baby got thrown out with the bathwater. And so all of these virtues and the, I would say, our divine design of how we were created to behave and to be in community with one another and to live in harmony and peace and love and caring for our neighbors and all of us thriving together. That's at the heart of my spirituality. I believe that's the heart of God. And um, and we've lost touch with that in so many ways. So it's not just being a good person. It's not just wearing and putting on some of these virtues. I think it's having that relationship that with your creator, that just deep down inside there's a yearning, there's a drawing us in to living that life that makes a difference, to living that life that has impact, living that life that's based in love and concern for others. So spirituality is critical, and I see that as a big factor in what's going on around the world. Um, and it can be a source of conflict, or it can be a source of healing. Um, and I just see what's going on as a lack of character, and so whether these people are spiritually connected or not, they certainly um, are not living according to the way maybe they've been taught. And I just throw this out, not as I don't mean this to be preachy in any way. I think it's just a calling for us to go back to the roots of our humanity, of our creation, and to realize that our divine design is not to rape and pillage and to be in conflict, but it's to be in peace, love, and harmony, and for the betterment of all mankind. And so for me, that I believe that's the heart of God, and I
Mm.
want to be in alignment with that.
Like what you said, that it's a personal relationship. I mean, it to me occurs that you could be Buddhist, you could be Christian, you could be anything, but as long as you're connected with a relationship to the creator in the terms that you have it, and that's a personal thing. I mean, you actually, when you have kids, it seems to me that you have to guide them back to themselves. It's not as simple as just telling them about it, which religion can be that way, which is how I was raised. I had to find it on my own, but it's one of those things that you can't, you can maybe show them the door, but it has to be walked through by the person who's engaging in it.
All of us have that choice, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it's the sometimes referred to as the road less traveled, right? And so we all get to choose. We have a life, and we have free will. So will we choose to live that life that is about more than ourselves? That is the question. You're right. Every one of us. All I can do is to help my children know where the door is, and certainly we all are influenced by our parents' spirituality or lack thereof. And all I can do is lead them in that direction, but they get to choose. Right.
Beautiful. I have one more question for you, and then I want to acknowledge you before we complete. What do you have any memory or anything you're most proud of? You can reflect on the years where like you really got that you've your kids are like great kids, and maybe you were a successful father. Do you have any memories or anything that just really strikes you?
I don't know that I have a specific memory, um, other than this one I'll share. When my wife and I decided that we wanted more kids. Um, Obviously, I was told by all my friends, it's crazy. You're getting to a point where you can just retire and travel the world and have all this freedom. Why you want to have little kids again? Um, and when I looked at uh, Joshua and Daniel, who are my two oldest boys, I looked at them and I saw their lives and the men that they had become, and I'm proud of the decisions they've made, and my middle son is married now, and already bought a house, and he's 25 and he's doing well and established in his career, and but he goes to church, and he has a connection with God, and I just look at their lives and I went, you know, I'm not anywhere near being a perfect dad, but if I had to look at anything that I'd done in my life that I thought, wow, I was really successful at it, I would tell you it was being a dad. And it was funny because that was my decision then to say, I'm going to have more kids so I get to do what I do best. And so it was in that decision, of having more kids that I was able to really look and celebrate the lives of these two men that I got a chance to pour into all these years.
Wow. Well, I can definitely acknowledge you as an amazing father. I know you as a friend and a mentor, and I think a lot of that virtuous way of being is rubbed off in our relationship, because when I'm in conversations with you, I feel the calling to be a bigger person. And obviously that's why you've taken on your business role, as a consultant and coach in companies. And I feel that you're just an amazing guide, especially in business, because a lot of businesses are run by greed. And if you can step in and you can show them how to profit and at the same time have the generous, compassionate type of leadership that I think companies need, I think that really makes a big difference. So it's my acknowledgement of you as an extraordinary human across the board.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to know you, and I'm glad I've been able to pour in a little bit of this wisdom that I've gotten over all these years, the hard way.
Yep. Oh, this has been an amazing interview. I can't even believe this is my first interview of the day, and you just sparked it off with so much love and joy and presence. I just, we'll have an edit by Sunday. I'm going to be editing a lot tomorrow, but I just want you to know that you've been a contribution so much to me in this call. And if there's any reflection to the people that are watching this live who will watch the Golden Nuggets once we put the edit out, I imagine that you've made a big difference just in this conversation.
Well, fatherhood is probably the toughest job in the world and the most rewarding, and it's not something to be taken lightly. That's for sure.
Yeah, thank you. And a lot of people end up fathers by accident. And I think that's the calling. That's the calling most, when people need to look at their lives and say, time to change something, time to bring a new focus and transformation. Step up. Yeah, that's the word. Step up.
And and isn't it true? I mean, that's the calling now, is either we see them, they step up or they step out. And and there's dramatic consequences of both decisions.
Wow. And that's always the calling for our lives, is to step up. So I appreciate you highlighting that here at the end of our call. I'm going to let you go because we're over our time. I want to thank you so much, and I look forward to next time. Let's have more conversations like this.
Absolutely.
I love this.
It's an honor. And Nathan, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care. Bless you. Ciao.